Streaming on in on Birds 365. John McMullen Jody McDonald here with you. We are joined by Jeff Nowak, who covers the Saints for WWL and WWL.com down there in New Orleans, podcast host for Saint football as well. Jeff, Jody Mack and John McMullen. See, now I got to ask you something before we ever get into the conversation on Saints. When I tried to book you and get you on the show, you said I needed to check how strong my strength is from the camping site I'm going to be at. That's no camping site where you're at. That's a studio that you're in right now. What happened to camping?
I'm not sure what you're talking about. Maybe you're talking about somebody else. I never said I was going to camping.
I'm screwing this up.
Jody's got like 17 different ships he's got to do. Probably mix you up with somebody else.
Let me see how this conversation went, just to be sure. Maybe I'm crazy.
maybe we're feeling.
Hey, never mind. All right, the host is an idiot. By the way, I like your studio. You're looking good there, buddy. What do you got over your shoulder?
Who?
Who's over your shoulder? What do you got the pictures over the shoulder?
So that's the Drew Brees.
From the newspaper I worked at back when Drew Brees broke the yardage record. Thought it was a pretty cool front. And so that's that. That's actually over my head is actually a Pulitzer. And then over here
I saw, by the way, I saw your Twitter feed.
Yeah.
You said Pulitzer adjacent, Jeff.
Yes.
So I need to know what Pulitzer adjacent means.
Well, so it's kind of weird because I was on a team that won a Pulitzer, right?
All right.
But I was on the digital side of things, and I didn't do any of the original reporting. You know, I did a lot of the editing, I did a lot of the headline writing, I created a splash page, I created like a interactive graphic, stuff like that. But it is weird to say like, oh, I won a Pulitzer when I didn't do the reporting.
No, you won
but I did. I have the thing. It's over my head. So
if it's over your shoulder, you got it, big guy. Take credit for it.
By the way, you're the second Pulitzer Prize winner on this program. We had Will Hobson from the Washington Post as well. So
gotcha.
Number
sorry
two.
if you hear a dog barking. He's upset because this is normally his go for a walk time. So he's standing at the bottom of the stairs, barking up, saying,
"You're probably
you have one job."
Hear my dog bark. So
you're talking to two other dog owners.
We are dog fans.
We know where you're coming from. All right, Jeff, how chock full of confidence are the Saints coming into this game, seeing as they are playoff adjacent?
Playoff adjacent is being generous. I think this is a team that I think will have some confidence that you haven't seen from them this year. You know, this is the first time all year they are on a winning streak. If you want to look at it that way, like you're not on a winning streak when you win one game. You have to win two games. And this is the first time all year they've won back-to-back games. And I think the way they did it, going out to Cleveland and winning that type of game in that type of conditions, 6 degrees at kickoff, everyone told them, oh, you're a warm weather team. You're going to have no chance. Well, they went out and they won. And I think that's only a game you win if you are still pushing hard. A lot of people have criticized the head coach, the roster construction, whatever. This team is still playing hard. And after what this season has been, there's something to be said for that. So, like, this could have been a game where on either side, these teams weren't motivated to like for any type of standings pressure. That's not the case. Both teams are going to be going all out. So, it's going to be a good game, I think.
Is that sort of, the Saints are in that position. It's going to be very difficult. That Tom Brady latest comeback really dampened any real hope of making the playoffs. You mentioned Dennis Allen. You always have the Sean Payton specter. It seems like every team with an open, Las Vegas is talking about it now. Denver's talking about it. The easiest path for Sean Payton would be going right back to New Orleans. And then you have the Tom Brady aspect of it. Everybody wants a 46-year-old quarterback. How does all that sort of outside noise, has that affected this team at all?
Well, it's always kind of been there. The new update is, and I've actually been talking about this for a while because I could see like the one scenario that Sean Payton might come back to the Saints is if he comes back with Tom Brady in his arms. And we've known for a while now, Sean Payton actually told us this directly, that, Tom Brady was going to be his quarterback if Drew Brees had retired in 2019. So, like, that's not just out of thin air. Like, that's a real thing. But the main difference is, like, until now, it's been like, yeah, Sean Payton's probably going to come back to coaching, but the ideal scenario for him is to go somewhere else. Well, now there's a lot of talk about him going back to the Saints. And now that's like, if you're Dennis Allen, that's got to be an awkward situation because it's not like the team or the coaching or the front office has come out and like denied that. So I don't know if it's going to have an impact on the team. It's been such a weird atmosphere around this team anyway the last few years with Drew retiring and Sean Payton just retiring out of the blue. So I don't think that's going to, it's just another drop in the bucket for the team, but it could make things awkward for the coaching staff. And that's something we're going to have to see going forward.
So there was no bad blood when Sean Payton decided to say adios and walk off into the sunset?
Not publicly. But behind the scenes, who knows? They did a good job of like putting on the right face, and they all hugged and they all said the right things. Mickey Loomis, this is kind of funny. Mickey Loomis said like multiple times we would ask him and he would be like, I'm not ready to talk about it yet. I'm going to talk about it here, like whatever he was going to talk next. And then he was like, I'm not ready to talk about it yet. I'm going to talk about it at the Senior Bowl. And then so Mickey Loomis actually never made a public announcement, like a public statement regarding Sean Payton leaving. Think about that. That's kind of crazy. And it's hard to believe that's because he was just so emotional. He was just so overcome with joy. Like, I think there is probably some lingering resentment there. And I think it could be a factor in whether they want to bring him back. And so if a team like the Chargers is willing to offer a first-round pick, I think you still probably would take it even if he does want to come back. So it's kind of this really weird scenario. But I don't think anyone on a team, or at least anyone like any of the players, are really thinking about that right now. Like, they're very focused on the Eagles because if they win this game, this is a team that's headed in the right direction, and maybe suddenly that changes your calculus completely. And you're like, you know what? Things have gone really wrong this season. There have been a lot of injuries, but they found a way to kind of coalesce late in the year, even if they don't make the playoffs, and that's something you want to bring back. So, I think there's still some positivity they can bring out of this season.
Well, we got to get to the game, Jeff, but you mentioned Mickey Loomis. I got to ask you about Mickey because in Philadelphia, he's very popular, even though they don't know him.
I can't imagine why.
Yeah. And the spin is that Howie Roseman kind of fleeced him a little bit. And obviously, the Eagles have the Saints first-round pick. And while earlier in the season it looked really bad from the Saints' perspective, they've started to win a little bit. It doesn't look quite as bad, and that will keep them, I imagine, playing until the end of the season. But how is Mickey Loomis looked at in New Orleans right now?
There's criticism there. This is obviously, as you can imagine, this is not a team that just fires people flippantly. Mickey's been in that position. He might be the longest tenured GM in the NFL. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but he's been there 20 years. And GMs don't typically last 20 years in the NFL. So that kind of shows you his staying power. But it does start to get awkward when you operate the way he does, which is very close to the sun. And then things don't go well. Like when they go well, you're like, you know what? Okay, I can get on board with you kind of over leveraging draft assets because like in 2017, you were able to have like one of the best drafts in NFL history, and so when you start drafting guys like, Marcus Davenport and Peyton Turner and, Cesar Ruiz, who struggled his first 2 years, but has really picked it up this year, even though he's on IR right now. That's when things start to get awkward. Now, this year, they had a very good draft, right? Chris Olave has been excellent. Alante Taylor, the second-round pick, has been excellent. We really haven't seen Trevor Penning, who is the real trade, right? Like when you talk about that first-round pick, they didn't just trade a first-round pick. They traded to basically move up that first-round pick from 2023 to 2022. And so the player they took is Trevor Penning. So if Trevor Penning ends up being a starting left tackle and is there for 5-10 years, then that trade was worthwhile, especially if you win a couple more games and you turn the pick you're sending, as you mentioned, into the 15th, 16th pick. Yeah. If you make the playoffs, probably the 19th pick, which is the pick they traded for because it's the worst pick you can get from a playoff team or the best pick you can get from a playoff team.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think there's a lot less kind of resentment in that direction right now than there could be had the season gone completely off the rails, had it gone like 3-14, because then you would be expecting him to fire the coach. And I don't think Mickey's going to fire Dennis Allen unless something crazy happens. But I think we're 1 or 2 seasons away from like serious criticism going at Mickey because it's going to result in like what the actual impact of these trades I'll tell you what, there was a lot more anger around the CJ Gardner-Johnson trade than there was the first round draft pick trade, because you're used to the draft pick trades. It's kind of just what happens every year. Like, if you get through a Saints draft without 3 or 4 draft pick trades, you're not watching, because they're always there. Whereas, like, handing away CJ for peanuts, because that's what it was. They got nothing. They just the only thing they got was him out of the locker room. That annoys people, because he was a fan favorite. He's a very good player. And they just got nothing for him, and they struggled in his absence. It's not like they had guys step in and play up to that standard. So, like, that trade, even more than the draft picks, is what people are really hinging on.
All right, I'm going to beat my partner to this question because I know he wants to ask it, and I want the answer too, so I'm going to ask it myself. Why Andy Dalton all these weeks? We all thought Jameis was going to be their starter when the season started, and Jameis wasn't great, but he wasn't awful. And Andy Dalton has been okay, nothing special, but yet it's Andy Dalton every single week, and it's never Jameis Winston. What happened? And then the second half of the question is, okay, so you're telling us down the road they could actually be back. Who the hell is the Saints quarterback of the future?
That is a very good question. If you asked me, I would have Jameis Winston as my starting quarterback. I think if you asked Sean Payton, he would have Jameis Winston as his starting quarterback. But if you ask Dennis Allen, he will give you a different answer. And I think there is a pretty clear reasoning for that, is that Dennis Allen is a defensive head coach, and he wants the offense to be at a baseline. He is more worried about the floor than the ceiling, because he knows that this team, if it's good, will be carried by the defense anyway. And so, and to be fair to Andy Dalton, he has played very well. I was very critical of Andy Dalton's ceiling going into the season, because a 35-year-old who's been kind of just walked off of 2 different teams is not a guy who I would trust. But he has been very, very efficient and very solid. And he's also worked well with the Taysom Hill kind of dynamic, which I don't think would work for every quarterback. Like, you need to be willing to give up 10 to 12 snaps a game and have to come off the field and come back on, and it messes with your momentum and your kind of rhythm in the game. And he's done that well. So, I think at the end of the day, I don't know if you would be better with Jameis Winston in there, because I don't think the issues you've dealt with are at the quarterback position. Like, I don't think the reason you're losing games is because of the quarterback position. But from an outside perspective, it does look weird. And from an inside perspective, it looks weird, because you're right. They don't have a quarterback of the future. They don't have a young quarterback. Like I was saying the other day, when you get to week 18, the Saints could be the team that actually gets to decide who wins the NFC South, not unlike the Eagles were a couple years ago when they played Washington. And I'm wearing my Giants shirts today, by the way. I grew up up there, and I was upset at the Eagles that year because I thought they could have won that game. They sure looked like the better team, and then they didn't tank, but they definitely tanked the second half of that game, and the Washington gets cakewalked into the playoffs. And that could be the Saints if we get into week 18 and the Panthers come to town with a chance to win the division. The Saints could be the team, because the Bucs would need the Saints to win to get in, and the Saints could be like, well, but they don't have a young quarterback they can even put in. You're not going to put Jameis Winston in. So, I don't know. It's a really weird situation. And I honestly have no idea. The guy they're going to face, if they face Gardner Minshew, that might be an audition for him, because I could see them going after him in free agency.
And by the way,
I don't know if he's under contract, trade for him, whatever.
No, he's free.
All the cards are on the table, I think, going into this offseason at quarterback.
To add to your pain, Jeff, Doug Peterson was just at his press conference this week saying every game matters. Every game. You always play to win.
Play to win.
And it didn't play to win, right, except for that one. But I do want to talk to you about Dennis Allen. Is that a philosophy you could win with in the modern NFL? Because that was my thought process from the outside looking in. He's a defensive guy. He wants a baseline. He wants no mistakes on offense. He wants to win games that way. We follow here a 13-2 team that is the number 2 ranked defense in the NFL, the number 1 ranked pass defense, and they just got scorched for 40 by Dallas. My point being, good offense beats good defense in the modern NFL. It used to be good defense beats good offense. Every defense. San Francisco would be the closest, but they gave up 40 plus points to Kansas City. every defense gets beaten at some point because everything's skewed towards the offense. Is that philosophy just a losing philosophy in the modern NFL?
Well, I mean, it is, and it's a losing philosophy regardless if you don't have a quarterback you trust. And I think that it's not a question of whether the Saints would rather have a super efficient, high-performing offense or not. It's a question of whether Dennis Allen trusted Jameis Winston to lead it. Because it's not like you have a choice of Jalen Hurts or then Andy Dalton, right? You have a choice of Jameis Winston or Andy Dalton. And if you're Sean Payton and you are very confident in your ability to lead a quarterback and kind of mold Jameis Winston what you want him to be, then yeah, I agree with you completely. If you're Dennis Allen, I think you're looking at it like, I don't have time to babysit Jameis Winston and make sure he's making good decisions. And you know, I'm not dealing with that week to week, but I do trust Andy. Then I think that for this team, it makes sense. But no, I agree with you. You want a quarterback. Any team that doesn't have the quarterback and they're looking at it and saying, this is the guy we think we can win a Super Bowl with, they're the curve and you're behind it, right? There are haves and have-nots at the quarterback position. And until you are on the right side of it, you are not winning a Super Bowl. You might contend for the playoffs, and that's what the Saints are trying to do right now in a really, really, really bad division. But, you know, they're not Super Bowl contenders, and they won't be until they get the quarterback in there. So you're right and you're right at the same time.
Well, don't sweat it because the Saints can draft that quarterback in the first round. Oh, no, that's right.
Exactly.
Jeff, great stuff. Appreciate you coming on board with us today. Thank you much, and enjoy the game on Sunday. Oh, and he froze up on us just as we were finishing the spot. That's Jeff Nowak from WWL.com.
There we go. Thanks, Jeff.
Jeff, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Enjoy the game Sunday.
For sure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Jeff Nowak, Pulitzer adjacent from WWL.com. I love that line, Pulitzer adjacent. All right, I'm Birds 365 adjacent. I got to jump out a little early again. Today, Johnny Mac will wrap things up with you with Tone on the backside. Are you Nick Sirianni adjacent?
Nick Sirianni adjacent tomorrow, so hour 2, I will probably be out early. So you get a little Barrett Brooks or Tone DeShields, I would assume.
Sounds good. We will figure that out by tomorrow. Johnny Mac coming back. He and Tone will wrap up Birds 365. Stay here.